You see, when people approach Tanach, when they learn Tanach, they're learning from a literary point of view. They're learning from a critical point of view. They're learning text. They're learning history, and that's not what Tanach is. What Tanach is really what we call a Musar Sefer. It's really about no different than Pirkei Avos. It's about the ethics and the morals and the values of the Jewish people. Let me take a step back. When we use the word Tanach, now today is strictly an introduction. This is the first of two introductions that we have to give to the book of Joshua. And the introduction itself is critical. I will, if I can get through this, I will actually tie this into Purim in the craziest of ways. Okay, Purim is coming 2 weeks, and you'll see an incredible connection between the book of Yehoshua, the book of Joshua, and Purim. But we'll get there. First of all, when we say the word Tanach, there are three words, three letters that make up the word Tanach. Taf, Nun, Chaf, Sofit. The Taf stands for Torah. The Nun stands for Navi. The Chaf Sofit stands for Ketuvim. It's the 5 books of Moshe. It is the books of the Navi, the books of the prophets, Joshua, Judges, Shmuel, which is one book, but it's split into 2. That's not our split. We'll talk about that at some time. Melachim, the book of Kings, which is also split into 2. Yeshayahu, the prophet Isaiah, Jeremiah, Yechezkel, Hosea, Yoel, Amos, Ovadia, Yonah, Micha, Nahum, Chavakuk, Tzvanya, Chagai, Zechariah, Malachi. That makes up the books of the prophets. And then in Ketuvim, in scriptures, we have Tehillim, Mishlei, Eov, Job. Then the 5 Megillos, we have Shir Hashirim, Rus, Eicha, Koheles, Esther, Daniel, Ezra, Nehemiah, and Divrei Hayomim Chronicles, again split into 2 Chronicles, 1 and Chronicles 2. Those are the 24 books of Tanach, basically the 24 books of the Bible. Now the question is like this. I have the Torah. I've got all the halachas. I've got all the mitzvahs. I've got everything that is expected of me as a Jew. What do I need anything more? Why do I need all the other stories? Don't tell me that it's history, because history can be taught to me in a much more effective way. So then what's the necessity of all of the books? It's certainly not halacha, because we know that a Navi Rishoi L'Chadesh Davar, a Navi, a prophet, is not allowed to institute anything new. At best, when there are certain laws that we learn out of the books of the prophets, those laws are considered dirabbanans. They're considered rabbinical laws. And some are considered divrei Kabbalah. Divrei Kabbalah means words that we received as tradition, which have a little bit more strength than a regular drabbanan, less strength than a Torah law, but that's the best that can happen. It's not there to instruct me in law. That's not why we have the books of the Nevi'im. So what exactly is it there for? We asked the same question about the stories in the book of Beratius. Why do we need the stories in the book of Beratius if the whole concept of Torah is lahoros, is to teach? So then if it's to teach laws and to teach me how to be a Jew, then chapter 12 of the book of Exodus is really where those laws begin. Why is the whole book of Beratius necessary? So Rashi has his own answer, which we'll talk about later, but in the very first Rashi of the Torah. But at the end of the day, we say that the necessity of those stories, of the stories of Avram, the stories of Yitzchak, the stories of Yaakov, is that we understand how to live that Torah. It's one thing for me to tell you to be a Baal Chesed. I want you to be kind. But let me show you how to be kind, Avram Avinu. It's one thing for me to tell you that I want you to be determined. I want you to be strong. Let me show you living strength. Let me show you Yitzchak. It's one thing for me to tell you that I want you to be an integrated person. I want you to have strength, and I want you to have kindness, and I want that to be integrated in you in the most even, beautiful kind of way. Let me show you Yaakov. So the entire book of Beratius is there to show me, to lay the groundwork for when I tell you later, this is what I expect of you and this is what I want of you, you will have an image in your mind of what that's to look like. And now that I've taught that to you, now that I've told you exactly what I expect of you, so now we take those ideas of the Torah and we show how to integrate them into our lives and to actualize them and to make them into something real. And the books of the Nevi'im are there to teach me, first of all, what do we believe? It's one thing, again, to have a Torah that tells me, do this, do this, do this, do this. But it's another thing for me to see, what does that mean in belief terms? What is it that I really believe in? What are my values? What are my ethics? What are my morals? What exactly is my relationship with God meant to be? Now, if you knew nothing about the Navi and all you knew was the Torah, and you went and you looked at it from the Torah, it'd be very difficult to figure out, what do I really believe in? If you wanted to write a chart, Jews believe in this, it'd be very difficult. But when you see the stories and you understand the stories from an ethical point of view, you understand them from an emotional point of view and a philosophical point of view. So you understand what the relationship with God is. And more importantly, and I'm going to show you a little of this in a few minutes, more importantly, what God's relationship is with us. The books of the Navi are also necessary, especially the book of Joshua, is to understand our relationship with Eretz Yisrael. Mind-blowing thought. When God came to Avram and he chose Avram, do you know what he didn't tell him about? Think about it. He didn't tell him about the Torah. He didn't tell him about what his kids were going to inherit in the future, that they were going to get the Torah. He told him about Eretz Yisrael. When he spoke to Yitzchak, when he spoke to Yaakov, he spoke about Eretz Yisrael. When he chose Moshe at the burning bush, this is mind-blowing. There's Moshe in the burning bush. He mentions off to the side that you're going to come and serve me on this mountain. So he tells him a little bit about that there's going to be a future of Torah, but that wasn't his main pitch. His main pitch was, get the people out of there and bring them to the land that I will show you. Bring them to the land of milk and honey. Because it's all ultimately about Eretz Yisrael. The Torah that we keep and the Torah that we live is actualized in its perfect place and its perfect way when it's inside of Eretz Yisrael. When there is no Eretz Yisrael, we still have the Torah. And that's the reason why in these past parshos, when we learn about the ark, that the ark represents the Torah, the ark is a box and it's got two Q-tips on the side of the box. And the reason I say Q-tips is because it's got two sticks, but the sticks are fat on either end. And they sit through rings. And the reason that they're fat on either end is so that they can't be pulled out. So that either way you go on them, they're stuck. Why do the sticks have to be stuck? In all the rest of the furniture of the temple, it all had these circles, these rings that you stuck sticks in, but the sticks come out, but not in the ark, not in the Aron. The Aron, the sticks had to stay in, because there is a fabulous message that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is sending to us, that the Torah has to be ready to be moved, that sometimes the temple might be destroyed, but the Torah will never be destroyed. The Torah doesn't stay in one place. If the temple doesn't exist, if Israel doesn't exist, so then you know what? You pick that Torah up and you take it to wherever you have to go. It always has to be movable. It always has to be ready to go. Notwithstanding that, where is its perfect place? Its perfect place is inside of the temple, in Yerushalayim, in Eretz Yisrael, which is where the Jews are meant to be. all of that is what we need the books of the prophet for. It's what we need Tanach for, is to be able to teach us all of this. The book of Yehoshua picks up after the death of Moshe, which I will talk about more next week. But let's take a look at this, of what is the overarching message of the opening of Tanach. Oh, let me stop here for 1 second. That's why I jumped on Harvey's idea to learn Tanach and learn Sefer Yehoshua, because it's the roots of all of the ethics of the fathers. It's the roots of all Musar. It's the roots of all of when we look at ourselves and say, what's the best for me to be? What's the straight path for me to walk on? What's the best way for me to develop myself as a human being? Is to look at Yehoshua and to look at King David and to look at the Jewish people as they settled themselves down for 350 years between the time they came into the land of Israel and the time when the temple was built, until the time they had a monarchy. How did they comport themselves? What did they do with themselves? And what does that mean to us as human beings? All of that is critical. And that's the way I study Tanakh. I'm interested in the story. I'm interested in the storyline, but I'm not learning it for the storyline. I'm learning it for the lessons and the messages that it has to teach me. And that's why tonight I want to look just at this concept of the book of Joshua, of coming into the land of Israel and settling the land of Israel, the transition from Moshe to Yehoshua. What does that say to me as a Jew? And what does that say to me as a human being? So I think we have to recognize Moshe dies on the 7th of Adar. 30 days later, they come into the land of Israel. Moshe was the son. His successor, Yehoshua, not one of his children. His successor was called the moon. That relationship between sun and moon needs to be explored in Mitzvah Hashem next week. But can you just imagine what it was like living with Moshe? Anytime anything went wrong, you knew how to get to God. You went to Moshe, you kvetched a little bit because he was a nice guy, and every time you heard a kvetch, it broke him, and you would go to God, and God would make it better. Everything you needed was provided for you. And then all of a sudden, Moshe dies. And when Moshe dies, everything changes. Aaron died. Miriam died. When Miriam died, there was no water, because the water was there for 40 years in merit of Miriam. And when she died, that water dried up. It was then reinstituted, but it was reinstituted because of Moshe. And then Aaron died. And when Aaron died, those clouds of glory, those clouds that protected us on 6 sides, the clouds that we go into a sukkah to remember those clouds died to be reinstituted for Moshe. And for 40 years, we were eating mun. We were eating the holiest of food. And then all of that ended when Moshe Rabbeinu died. And now we have to go and we have to eat from the produce of the land. We have to go and work, and we have to go and plant and toil, and we have to plow, and we have to produce. We never did that. We never did that. Clearly something has changed, because if you look in the opening chapter of the book of Joshua, the phrase chazak v'amatz, be strong and be courageous, be strong and be courageous, which I'll spend a lot of time on later. Be strong and be courageous. It keeps getting repeated. Be strong and be courageous. I don't need to tell you to be strong and courageous unless you're weak and fearful. Clearly, something has shifted, because strong and courageous does not appear in that volume in the Torah. Suddenly, in the Navi, suddenly God is turning to us and saying that you need to be strong and you need to be courageous. What shifted now? You notice another thing. For 40 years, almost, there was no bris milah. There were plenty of Jews born, and there was no bris. Now, all of a sudden, we're commanded to have a bris milah when we come into the land of Israel. Why was there no covenant for all those years? We understand it was dangerous traveling and all of that. But now, along with the fact that we don't have water, and along with the fact that we don't have the clouds, and along with the fact that we don't have the mun, and along with the fact that we have to eat from the produce of the land, now we have a major piece of surgery that we have to do. Now we have to do bris milah. If you look at this carefully, the mun, the water, the clouds, the fact that everything was provided for us, our clothes didn't wear out, we were never bitten by a snake or a scorpion in the desert, we were completely and totally protected. And now, without water and without mun, and without all of those things, it's an indication that God was stepping back. Don't leave now, because I'll sound like an apostate. Let me explain what that means. But that clearly now the relationship is changing between God and the Jewish people, and that God wants us to be more independent. The very first thing that we're told in the Torah that we have to do when we come into Eretz Yisrael, v'hoya ki savo el haaretz, it will be when you come into the land, unitatem kol eitz ma'achal, you will plant every fruit tree. The first thing that God said to us is, I want you to be independent. I want you to be in control. And why is that? Because God made on Mount Sinai a covenant with the Jewish people. Our relationship with God is called a covenantal relationship. What is a covenant? What is a bris? So when I say the word bris, a lot of times you think automatically of cutting off a piece of skin and bagel and lox. It's a funny little thing that goes together. But, that's, you think of a bris, you think of breakfast. No, bris, why is a bris such a big simcha? Why is it something, if you think about it, Pesach's got the most traction probably of any holiday, but it's not a lot of traction. In our secular world, it's not a lot of traction. Sukkot, Shavuos, what are you talking about? Shavuos. Why did Bris hold on? Okay, there's a couple of enlightened Jews, a couple of wokes that not into Bris, but B'derech Klal Jews. I mean, I can tell you, I tell you incredible stories. There was, I'm not going to go through them, but I'll just tell you that there was once a mile in San Diego, a very, very close friend of mine, very, very beginning when we got there, and he was actually a pediatric neurologist, and he was doing his residency in San Diego, and he was a mile, and we got called once to do a milah in Camp Pendleton. A Yiddish girl, Israeli, married to a non-Jew. Baby was Jewish, and she knew she had to have a bris milah. She was as far out as you can go. She knew she had to have a bris milah. We get to the house. The dad was leaving because he had to go to work. This kid was having a circumcision. Okay, just take care of my kid. That's all. And said, hey, oh, nice to meet you guys. Have a nice day. That was it. And it was such an amazing bris because it was a real bris. It was a real covenant. It was a rejuvenation of this covenant that exists between God and the Jewish people with one of his far-flung children. Because that's what a bris is. A bris is about a covenant. It's about a deal. You do your stuff and I'll do my stuff. You keep connected to me and I'll keep connected to you. And that Makom HaMilah, the place of the Milah, that's the symbol. It's the Os Bris Kodesh. It's the symbol, the sign of the Holy Covenant. Because a bris is not unilateral. By definition, a bris requires two people. It's not me taking care of you, it's me taking care of you and you taking care of me. When we enter into a relationship of a bris, a relationship of a covenant, we each have responsibilities. We each have something that we have to do. Until now, in the midbar, in the desert, we were too young to really be associated with the bris. That's why we didn't have bris milah. The bris milah is the symbol of that bris, the symbol of that covenant, of that two-way street. You do yours and I'll do mine. But we had just come out of Mitzrayim. We weren't strong enough yet to be able to do that. And as a matter of fact, the entire group that came out of Mitzrayim, they never became strong enough to be part of this covenant, to take up their part. And that's the reason why that entire generation was wiped out. The entire generation died. Every year on the 9th of Av, after the sin of the spies, every year on the 9th of Av, they would dig graves and all the Jewish people would lie down in the graves. Everybody would lie in the graves. And then in the morning, those that were still alive would get out and they would bury the ones that had died. And this took place over 38 years until finally, the final year, they lied down on the 9th of Av and nobody died. They thought maybe they had it wrong. They were looking at the moon to see when the date was. So they lied down on the 10th of Av. And they did it again on the 11th of Av and nobody died. On the 12th of Av, 13th of Av, 14th of Av, nobody died. On the 15th of Av, when there was a full moon, they knew it wasn't the 9th anymore. They knew they had the date correct. It was the 15th. They knew the 9th had passed and no one died that night. They knew that that was it. This generation was now going into the land of Israel, and the generation that died was gone. The generation that had come out of Mitzrayim, that generation was gone. And the reason they needed to be gone is because they were children that couldn't mature. They could never get themselves to a place of where they were able to rise to this covenant, where they were able to do their part. It's fascinating that the people here in Sefer Yehoshua are the children of the Yotzei Mitzrayim. It's the children of the ones that left Egypt. When the people that left Egypt, one of the first things that they said is that our children are going to die. How could you take us out of Egypt? Our children are going to die. Let me tell you the truth. It's not their children that are going to die. It's you that's going to die. And your children are going to be the ones who are going to be able to go into the land of Israel. Because it's your children who are going to be able to mature to become adults. And what's an adult? An adult is someone who recognizes that there are others and other things in this world. A child is not obligated in mitzvahs because a child doesn't recognize other people. A child doesn't recognize a God. A child only knows a child. They know their world. They know what they're getting. They know what's in it for them. When a child hears about an event that's going to take place, parent says to the child, we're going to such and such a place. The child doesn't think about this is going to be fun for the family. This is going to be a great bonding time for me and my parent. It's going to be, what am I getting out of this? Because a child is focused on themselves and a child is focused on what they can receive. When the child gets nervous, it gets nervous because the parent is not taking care of me. Not I'm not living up to my responsibility. A child doesn't have responsibility. That's why they're a child. They can't fathom responsibility. And that's what we try to teach a child as they grow older and older until they hit that age of bar and bat mitzvah, when now they can accept responsibility. And that's the reason why at 12 and 13, they become obligated in mitzvahs, because now they've hit a place where they can start to understand things and they can start to be responsible for things. They can have a relationship. It's not just your relationship with me. It's not just what you give to me. It's not just what I'm getting, but that I can give something also. That's why Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't lead them into the land of Israel. Because Moshe Rabbeinu was their mother. Anytime something went wrong, what did Moshe Rabbeinu do? He cleaned them up. They were thirsty, he got them water. They were hungry, he got them food. Everything that they needed, he was there for them, which is amazing, which is what Moshe Rabbeinu was supposed to do. But at the end of the day, he mothered them. And by mothering them, he wasn't giving them room to operate. He wasn't giving them room to find themselves. He wasn't giving them room to take ownership on that relationship with God. The mun that they were eating, that mun was like mother's milk. They didn't have to do anything for it. It dropped right in front of them. They were hungry, they went out and took it. And each day they went out to take whatever they needed. They couldn't take more. They couldn't overload, because if they overloaded, so then they would become wormy, it would go. Because it was just every day, it was there whenever they needed. Don't worry. It's like a mother's breast. It's there for you whenever you need it. You know, when they got a little kvetchy about the mun, what did they ask for? They didn't ask for chocolate. They didn't ask, can we have a piece of cake? It's like, enough already with the mun. Give me a piece of cake. They didn't ask for that. What did they ask for? Meat. You know why they asked for meat? Because meat's adult food. Meat's difficult to process. Meat is something that requires a process. It requires preparation. Meat is considered adult food. At that very time, what is it that God gave Moshe? He told him to appoint 70 elders. Up until then, up until that point of when they asked for meat, everything was Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, all of a sudden, things change, and now 70 elders are introduced. Why 70 elders? Because now they're becoming adults. And you know what those 70 elders were responsible for? They were Sanhedrin. They were Supreme Court. What's a Supreme Court obligated to do? Adjudicate, decide laws, institute laws, make principles. Torah Sheba'al Peh, the oral Torah. Engaging with that bris, with that covenant. Being a partner with God in that covenant. It's not just about the Torah you gave me, it's about the way I live with that Torah. Because at that point, the transition was starting to take place in the Jewish people, that we were going from babies, we were going from little children to being adults. And what is an adult? An adult is somebody who takes ownership in the relationships, is a person that understands that I have to put in order to get out. What we're watching in the beginning of the book of Yehoshua, and throughout the book of Yehoshua, and even in the book of Shoftim and the book of Judges, is we're watching a people become adults. But let's take that one step further. How was the land of Israel portioned out? How did they decide which tribe was going to get which piece of land? Anybody know? It wasn't based on size. It was based on, and this is a difficult concept, it was based on a goral. You know what a goral means? A lottery. That they did a lottery. That this group was going to get this piece of land, this tribe was going to get this piece of land. Why dafka by a goral? Why didn't God just dictate? You're getting here, you're getting here. Why have to? It was all God, of course. The way the goral, the way this lottery worked out, it was all God. So why don't you just say it straight? Yehuda, you're over here from point A to point B. Shimon, you're over here from point A to point B. Don, you're over here from point A to point B. Because there is a message in a goral. The message in a lottery is that I'm letting go control. Let things fall where they may. And then let's work with that. Part of our maturing and our growing was the realization that not everything is being dictated. We have to set things up. We have to work with situations. We have to apply things in situations. So good, I've got a lot of people. You're giving me this land. Let me figure out how I'm going to work that out. The gyro, the whole lottery concept is that I'm not strictly dictating. There is no chance in the world. We understand that. But it's an image of chance. And it's an image that through which God teaches us that, you know what? I'm leaving you some room to operate. I'm leaving you some room to be able to develop yourselves and to be able to grow yourselves. And without that, there can be no maturity. That's why there is a concept called Torah Sheba'al Peh. Why do you think God gave us some of the Torah written, some of the Torah oral? Just write the whole thing down and leave me alone. So we don't have to fight about whether you're allowed to do this on Shabbos and not allowed to do Shabbos. I asked my rabbi said he could do it. I asked my rabbi, he said he can't do it. What do you need all that stuff for? Just have it written down. This is the way it is. Because God gave us an oral Torah, because that's part of maturing. That's part of picking up your responsibility in the covenant. You are involved here. It's not being dictated and thrust on you. You have to find your place inside of it. Lo b'shamayim, it says in the Torah. It's not in the heavens. Now we have parameters that we have to operate in. You can't go all the way to the ends. There's parameters, but within those parameters, find yourself. Find your relationship with me. You know what's fascinating? What's the most important part of Yom Kippur? I have to do this fast. What's the most important part of Yom Kippur? Fasting, yeah? Yeah. In the Torah, the most important part of Yom Kippur, fasting is definitely an important part of Yom Kippur, but the avodah, the service that was done in the temple, most important part of Yom Kippur. And you know what the most important part of the service that was done in the temple? It was the atonement that was achieved. And you know how the atonement was achieved? They took 2 goats, and they put 2 goats on the steps, near the steps of the temple. And the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, came with a little box, and he did a lottery. And one of those goats was chosen to go to God, slaughtered, and blood sprinkled all over the place. And the other one was taken out to a mountain and was thrown off of a mountain. The second one, Lazazel. I don't have time to explain all of that, but that's what went on. That goral, right? That same word that I've been using, that lottery. That's the centerpiece of Yom Kippur. Because it sends a message. When you leave things up to chance, when you have choices, sometimes you make the right choices, sometimes you make the wrong choices. And it's a reminder that when you make the right choice, it's La Hashem, it goes to God. When you make the wrong choices, it goes La Azazel, it goes off a mountain, it goes south. But it's all about your choices. I'm not dictating. You're not a robot. You're a human being. And a human being makes choices. And on Yom Kippur, we have to be reminded, you've made some bad choices. Fix that up, and now pick yourself up and make the right ones. Make good ones. I heard a line once, if there's no chance, then you don't have a chance. There has to be room to operate. There has to be room for error. That's called being an adult. You know, it says that there's a rebellious child. Again, I'm gonna run out of time here, but there's a rebellious child. The rebellious child in the Torah, we're told that he's taken to the courts and he's killed. The parents say that, he's 13 years old, 13 years and 3 months. We can't control this child, so they give him over to the Bezdin. Bezdin kills him. Okay, whatever that is, the Torah tells us, the rabbis tell us that this can never happen. Never, ever, ever, ever happen. Called the Mensora Mora, the rebellious child. It can never happen. Why can it never happen? Because the Torah says we look at him and we say, Nidon Ashum Sofa. We judge him based on where he's going. He's going in a bad direction, so we kill him now. That's impossible. You know why that's impossible? Because no one's ever locked in. We're not locked in. There's always room for change. There's always room for growth. There's always room to become something better and bigger. And that's what the Goro reminds us. That's what the choice reminds us. That it's all about choices. It's fascinating. I'm not going to be able to do it this week, but we got the idea. The idea is that the beginning of the book of Yehoshua is all about watching us mature. The Bris, the covenant, watching us make choices, settling the land of Israel, watching us become a people. Because who are we Jews? We are Jews by choice. We choose to be what we are. We are not locked in. We are not forced. We have chosen and we choose to be the kinds of people that we are. And if we're not happy with that, that means that there's something wrong with the choices that we make. When we learn the book of Yehoshua, one of the things we're going to focus on is the choices that were made, the right choices and the wrong choices, so that we can watch the emergence of a people and understand how to shape ourselves based on that. Okay, so I'm telling you now that I have my Purim class ready because this next step was to take this whole idea, take into Purim in a fascinating way. Because, by the way, what's the centerpiece of Purim? The lottery, the Goral that Haman did to choose a date of when to destroy the Jews. So what does the word Purim mean? Purim?
Lots.
Say it again?
Lots.
Lottery, Goral, choice. That's what it's all about. Yom Kippur is Yom Kippurim. Okay, we'll get that another time. I ran out of time now. Either I'll do it next week, or I'll say it over as a special Purim class. And next week I want to talk about Joshua. Let's start moving into the book. But why Joshua? Why was he chosen? What do I have to learn about Joshua? And let me tell you something. Joshua has so much to say to us as human beings, and that'll be our next step. Okay.
See you then, Rabbi.